The United Conservative Caucus of Alberta has officially reinstated Jennifer Johnson following a recent controversy involving a heated exchange with a transgender activist. We discussed this meeting between Johnson and the transgender ideologue on a previous episode of the show, but we'll dive more into Johnson's reinstatement shortly. I'm Isaac Lamoureux, your host of the Alberta Roundup. I'm happy to be back on the show with you all this week, but I'll be even happier to see you in person very shortly. For those that haven't heard, I will be speaking at True North Nation in Calgary on October 26th alongside Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, author Andrew Lawton, and my colleague and former host of the Alberta Roundup, Rachel Parker. During the show, I'm going to be going through a top 10 list of the worst and craziest ideas from Alberta left-wing leaders these past few years. Feel free to leave any ideas in the comments. You can buy tickets at truenorthevents.ca, and I can't wait to see you all there. But now, hopping back into this development with Jennifer Johnson. The United Conservative Caucus of Alberta announced on Wednesday afternoon that Johnson would be rejoining the group. They posted the news to X with a video of Johnson. Here's some of what she had to say.
Today, I want to take a moment to address a serious matter. Prior to being elected, I used an inappropriate analogy while discussing education policy surrounding trans youth. And for that, I sincerely apologize. I want all children working through gender identity issues to know that you are cared for, valued, and respected.
Also, here's a transcript of Johnson's initial comments, which oddly enough, in no way compared transgender children to feces, despite the claims from legacy media that made it out that way. So whatever, maybe the initial comment was taken a bit out of context, but why Johnson recently made international news was based on a completely different interaction. Johnson recently attended a meeting with the Lacombe Pride Society, Ponoka Pride Society, Central Alberta Pride Society, and others, where one activist attempted to force her to say biological men can be women. The interaction caught global attention, with J.K. Rowling sharing the clip and Elon Musk reacting to it. As you all know, a picture tells 1,000 words, and Rowling said, quote, "Honestly, you don't even need to turn up the sound."
Hi, Jennifer. I really want to thank you for meeting with us today and taking the time to try to signal that this is more of a priority for you.
Absolutely. Delighted to meet with you all.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Before I would ever say, though, that this was a productive meeting and be counted to the list of contacts that you've reached out to in the queer community, I have to know a few things of where you sit. Will you state on the record right now that trans women are women?
I've never been asked that before.
Will you say that on the record right now?
No, I want to have some time to think on that.
Okay, well, that's me. Have a great day. And I will be speaking out against this meeting because you are clearly not ready to have this. So I'm not going to be added to the list of meetings that you are going to have with people where you say, well, I met this person and this person, because no. You can't say I've had these consultations and use that as justification for you to work your way back into caucus, which is why we know you're really here. This only happens. This meeting is only happening because you're on Twitter, in the Twitter sphere, and people are debating whether or not you're going to be led back into caucus, and Premier Smith is debating that. And so you need to do some PR work. And I'm not going to be your Band-Aid. I'm not going to be your pink washing unless you can tell me right now that you believe that I, as a trans woman, right now, right here, am a woman. Then we don't have a lot to work on here. You want to talk about listening to the community? If you can't start with that basic foundational principle that we are who we say we are in our bones, then I don't think we're on the same page for working forward. So I'll give you one last chance. Are trans women women? Will you say that on the record right now?
Victoria, we can disagree on things. And
not on that. Not on my identity. No. Not on that.
And I can still care about you, even if we disagree.
Wonderful. But I will be speaking out against this meeting 100% if you can't say that right now, because I'm not going to have you add my name to the list of meetings that you've had to show that you're, quote, doing the work, because you're not doing the work. The work is the inner work. You're learning the outer work. You're learning what you're allowed to say in public and what you're not, so you don't get in this situation again, because you got caught saying what you really thought. And you did think that. But you haven't shown that you've changed. Because if you can't respect us, then how can I work with you? If you don't believe that I am a woman sitting right here, right now, how on earth are you saying that you're working with me? What work have you done then if you can't start with, yes, Victoria, you are a woman?
Can we disagree and still respect each other?
No, goodbye.
Despite various local pride societies releasing a joint statement slandering Johnson, she did not bend the knee. Some people celebrated her for not capitulating to the woke mob. Johnson's return to caucus follows Conservatives from across the province pleading with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith to reinstate her. In Wednesday's press release, the party said that Johnson's reinstatement actually follows an internal caucus vote. Over the past 17 months, MLA Johnson has done a very good job as a local MLA. After having a very thoughtful discussion with our caucus team, our MLAs voted to acknowledge her hard work, recognize her efforts, and welcome her into the government caucus, said Chief Government Whip Shane Getson. Johnson had been sitting as an independent since her removal from the party, but her status as United Conservative MLA is in effect immediately. So now we're going to move over to the news we've seen coming out of Jasper over the last few weeks, and yes, it is a lot of information. I spent many hours this week researching clips and testimonies coming out of the House of Commons this week, but honestly, it still wasn't enough. The Conservatives are now setting forward a motion that calls for additional testimony from forest management experts, stakeholders, Indigenous communities, and impacted individuals during the 4 additional meetings that they are calling for. Conservative MP Dan Mazier wrote a post to X where he shared the motion, and he said, quote, "Over the last 2 weeks, an alarming amount of evidence has been released at the Environment Committee that shows Minister Guilbeault was negligent in protecting Jasper." Mazier runs through a few of the key developments, one being that Guilbeault's senior officials were found discussing the cancellation of prescribed burns for, quote, political purposes months before the fire, which caused nearly $1 billion in damage and destroyed a third of the town. Yes, this resulted in over 360 square kilometers of burned or partially burned area and 358 destroyed structures. Mazier said the investigation also revealed that the top officials at Parks Canada could not say how many hectares of dead pine remain in Jasper. They don't even know.
I'd like to know how much is left now. I'm sure we have the technology to do a reasonable assessment. I don't need a specific number, but you wouldn't release that to the media in August. Will you table it with the committee so we can have a real understanding? Our emergency response minister, instead of preparedness, should probably be aware of how much deadwood still exists. Is that information that you could share with this committee within the next week?
Yeah, 15 seconds. I'm really going to run the clock tight right now, but.
I'm not sure if we have what you ask in that time frame.
That seems like a problem to me.
No.
That's not a problem?
No.
And of course, True North's previous exclusive featured Peter Schultz, who was hired by Parks Canada in 2008, and he estimated that by last summer, close to 40% of Jasper National Park trees were standing deadwood, killed by pine beetle infestation. Another shocking revelation that recently came out of the investigation was that Parks Canada turned away firefighters who arrived on the scene to help fight the fire. 50 firefighters and 20 fire trucks were turned away by Guilbeault's office when they arrived in Jasper to help fight the fire. President of Arctic Fire Safety Servers, Christopher Levin, testified that they were deemed, quote, non-essential and were ordered to leave by Parks Canada. He also revealed another shocking development, which was that Parks Canada ordered hydrants for Jasper with different threading than those used in Alberta and British Columbia municipalities, which meant that only 7 compatible adapters were available for firemen to use. At one point, Livum said that his crew was forced to watch structures burn because they could not connect to the nearby hydrant due to its incompatible threading. Livum said the following.
Mr. Chairperson and committee members, the statement that I provide today will provide a shocking example of how mismanaged the Jasper fire was by Parks Canada and should warrant a deeper investigation into this agency's fire management and overall role as guardians of Canada's most important and cultural assets.
The next thing that happened with Livum is insane. At one point, the committee chair stopped him from testifying, arguing that the interpreters could not interpret him. However, various people testified in French directly after him and had no issues with interpretation.
Sorry, is that directed at Mr. Willem?
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, the interpreters can't interpret him. So you could still ask him just submit something in writing, if you wish, or make a statement, but he cannot.
We can't let him try to.
No, well, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Okay. Yes, go ahead. Mr. Messier, thank you very much for your approach, which I find very practical. Your vision is very tangible and concrete and impressive. Like you have heard the firefighters' testimony, and I can see how attentive you were. Could you tell us what you feel about it? 30 seconds. Well, it's really not in my purview. I was very surprised to hear that all of the resources weren't there to fight fires. And I imagine that there must be certain structural problems with regards to management and with all the different organizations, but I can't really pronounce myself more than that. But like us, you must have been shocked and outraged to hear that there are firefighters who are there willing to fight. Yes, well, we've got over 4 minutes. Maiden Taylor-Royce, it's your turn now.
Separately, Alberta's Minister of Forestry and Parks, Todd Loewen, testified that Alberta increased the firefighting budget by 55% from 101.4 to 155.4 million. The province also increased its contingency amount from $1.5 to $2 billion, a 33% increase. He said that the Liberals' Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Harjit Sajjan, was not opposed to Alberta being in the Unified Command and in a decision-making position. However, Minister Guilbeault was. As you all well know, Guilbeault and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith have a long history of not getting along. Canadians are demanding answers, said Mazier when sharing his motion to X. We won't stop until we get them. This next part might be hard to believe, but it actually gets even worse for Jasper residents and Albertans. Talk about kicking someone when they're down. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced on Wednesday that Randy Boissonnault will serve as ministerial lead for Jasper, despite Boissonnault facing a separate ethics probe at the committee level. I have one question. Which Randy are we talking about here? Boissonnault or the other Randy? Now, moving on to some other big and controversial news. This that business owners in Alberta who faced economic losses due to pandemic closures may soon be able to proceed as a class action and sue the provincial government for damages. This, of course, at the expense of themselves, the taxpayer. Yeah, what a conundrum we found ourselves in, wherein business owners who suffered financial losses due to pandemic restrictions are essentially trying to sue themselves, the taxpayer, for lost income. So Justice Feasby presided over a class action certification hearing on October 2nd and 3rd, during which the court reviewed whether business owners from across Alberta who were restricted by public health orders during the COVID-19 pandemic should be able to sue the Alberta government as a collective. The lawsuit is spearheaded by 2 primary plaintiffs, Rebecca Ingram, a gym owner, and Christopher Scott, owner of the Whistle Stop Cafe. Both allege that their businesses suffered substantial losses due to public health orders issued by Alberta's former Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dina Hinshaw, during the pandemic. This, of course, before she was removed from her role by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith in 2022. Despite initially questioning the suitability of Ingram as a lead plaintiff, the Alberta government later conceded that Ingram could serve as a representative plaintiff. However, the government's legal team was more critical of Scott's suitability. Alberta's lawyers argued that Scott's actions, including operating his business against public health orders and benefiting from public donations, disqualified him as a class representative because he may not have suffered losses in the same way as other business owners. They argued that because his personal circumstances did not reflect the broader class, he was unsuitable for the role. However, the plaintiff's lawyers contended that the class action could proceed with Ingram as the sole representative plaintiff, so it didn't really matter what they thought of Scott, and of course, the defense, which is Alberta, disagreed. So if certified, business owners who operated in Alberta between 2020 and 2022 and were impacted by the public health orders may be eligible to join the class action lawsuit. Rath & Company, the law firm representing the plaintiffs, said that the legal foundation for the case is derived from the Ingram decision, which determined that the rules were outside of the law regarding the Public Health Act. Of course, I was lucky enough to be at this class certification for over the 2 days, so the certification process for a class action involves a 5-part test. The court must determine whether the claim represents a valid cause of action, identifies an appropriate class of persons, presents common issues of fact or law, demonstrates that a class action is a preferable procedure, and shows that the proposed representative plaintiffs are suitable to advance the case on behalf of the class. This test also requires the court to assess whether the plaintiff's claims are strong enough to be pursued on behalf of all affected business owners. The plaintiff's legal team asserted that the public health orders exceeded the government's legal authority, seeking compensation for economic losses suffered by businesses that were forced to close or restrict their operations. They emphasized that a class action was the most efficient way to handle the claims, as it would prevent the need for thousands of individual lawsuits. In defense, Alberta's legal team maintained that the restrictions were implemented in good faith based on the best available science at the time. They also pointed out that Alberta Health Services, not the provincial government, was responsible for enforcing the orders. Additionally, they argued that the diversity of businesses involved, ranging from small to large, would require highly individualized assessment of damages, making a class action inefficient and inappropriate. If FESB certifies the class action, business owners who suffered under the COVID-19 restrictions will automatically be included unless they choose to opt out and pursue legal action on their own. Whether the class is certified or not, if any plaintiffs are awarded damages, the money will come from all taxpayers in the province, including the plaintiffs themselves. FESB concluded the hearing by saying that he felt the case was argued very well by both sides. He added that there were many documents to sort through and it would not be a simple process. He hoped to have a decision ready by December 1st, at which point he said, you can come knocking on my door if I haven't gotten back to you by then. Yeah, feel free to let me know what you guys think about this crazy situation in the comments. I'm personally finding it hard to cheer for the business owners, considering I'll be the one picking up the tab. So will you, assuming you live in Alberta, and so will they. Now moving on to our next story, Danielle Smith announced on Tuesday that her Chief of Staff, Marshall Smith, was retiring from the public service after 32 years of working in it. She said, quote, "It has been an honor to work with Marshall. I and our entire province owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude for his service to Alberta." It was Marshall Smith who has been largely credited for implementing Alberta's recovery model to the drug crisis, which now other provinces, even like the deeply flawed drug-handing out British Columbia, has began to implement parts of. Danielle Smith, and I'll remember to keep trying to use the first names here so we don't get confused between the two Smiths, but Danielle Smith said, quote, "After countless achievements, the Alberta model is gaining international recognition and sweeping Canada as the common sense approach to addressing mental health and addiction." So deaths from opioid addictions are down 53% in June this year compared to last. Additionally, opioid-related EMS responses have decreased by 59% between June 2023 and 2024. Alberta's per capita rate was 49% lower than BC in June 2024. Smith said that she's been working on the transition plan since January, and that Rob Anderson, who has served as her executive director of the Premier's office over the last 2 years, will become her chief of staff by the end of the month. Now moving on to our last story of the day, and you guys know I like to lighten it up for the last story, not only on this show, but on other ones as well. So this comes from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, who are urging all provincial premiers to join New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs's federal carbon tax legal challenge. The Federation's call follows Higgs relaunching another legal challenge against the federal carbon tax as the province nears an election this month. The federal director of the CTF, Franco Terrazzano, said, quote, "Higgs is right that the carbon tax is an unfair punishment on Canadians, and all premiers should stick up for their taxpayers by following his lead." Despite initially urging all premiers, the CTF later called on Smith directly, and they also called directly on some other premiers. But Chris Sims, CTF's Alberta director, said, quote, "Alberta successfully led the fight against the No More Pipelines law at the Supreme Court, and Smith should get our province to do the same against the carbon tax." She added that Albertans are being punished every time we pay our heating bills, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is shredding constitutional accountability with his unequal application of the carbon tax. Sims said that removing the carbon tax would save the average Albertan home about $439 a year based on how much natural gas they use. This doesn't even begin to account for the compounding effect of the cost of the carbon tax, by the way, which is that every item you ever purchase has numerous chains wherein it uses gas, and the carbon tax has an effect on the cost. 7 provincial premiers previously called for carbon tax relief, and so too did 7 in 10 Canadians. However, as you'll remember, despite the calls, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau rejected any request to meet about the carbon tax and discuss its future. With the many provincial elections upcoming, we've seen even left-wing groups like the NDP take a stance against it. My question is, how long until we're finally done with this tax? And I hope that when we're finally lucky enough to kiss it goodbye, that we never see it again. That's probably how girls feel about me. Yeah, that wraps up our last story. So let's hop into the comment roundup before I get into the outro, or before I get myself into too much trouble here. So the first comment I want to cover is actually 2 comments about Randy Boissonneau, and there were far more. I just chose these 2 from at Sandy Klein and at K McGovern 1380, which said, quote, "Randy now has 0 credibility. He is not worth Danielle Smith's baby finger. Issues like what, Randy? You staying up all night to talk to trans youth?" And then the next one said, quote, "I think Randy needs to clean up his act before slinging mud at Danielle. I would like to see how many doors he knocked in and how many said that. Proof, please. No more lies." I found these interesting considering Randy Boissonneau is somehow making it into the show in back-to-back weeks. So addressing what he said last week about people not wanting to speak to him until they find out he's liberal, look, Randy, that has never happened. It's even that happening is even more rare than something truthful coming out of your mouth, Randy. Imagine now if you were involved in a scandal involving hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars and your reward, getting promoted. Must be nice. Moving into the next comment from @RedTankGirl5, who said, quote, "Nagar is the epitome of what real journalists are, and we should all be thankful for him and all like him. We need to protect our true journalists like Nagar. So thankful for his kind still existing in this climate today. Edit. The day a liberal shows up on my land, they better be wearing trainers because they will not be welcome on my property." Yeah, so the last part of your comment kind of ties into what I was just saying, which is liberals showing up on Albertans' properties is not a welcome sight to many people. And yeah, Nagar putting his life at risk, so to speak, to get the truth out there, and his attack only proves what he was writing about, as another commenter on the last video mentioned. So I'd like to thank everyone for staying tuned throughout the entirety of this Alberta Roundup. You should know it's one of my greatest pleasures and greatest honors to be able to host this show for you all. And I won't lie, it's a really nice distraction from the fact that the Oilers lost 6-0 in their season opener. However, last year we lost 8-1, so we're already off to a better start. The Flames had a great comeback, though, so at least there's that for any of you Flames fans out there. I didn't see the Goudreau tribute, but I imagine it was special, and I know that the first Battle of Alberta is definitely a hockey game that I'm looking forward to. Now, just a reminder that I will be speaking at True North Nation in Calgary on October 26th, alongside Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, author Andrew Lawton, and my colleague and former host of Alberta Roundup, Rachel Parker, alongside many other of my True North colleagues. During my speech, I'm going to be going through a top 10 list of the worst and craziest ideas from Alberta left-wing leaders these past few years. Again, please comment any of your ideas and certainly buy tickets to the show to see if your idea made the list. You can buy tickets at truenorthevents.ca. And if you see me at the show, feel free to come say hi. Just don't do it while I'm on stage, which is around 9:35 a.m. because I just think it'll be a bit less awkward if you come say hi to me after I'm done my speech, because yeah, during the speech won't be the best time. But I will try and get the crowd involved, and don't worry though, I'll have lots of time afterwards to talk to you all about Alberta this, Alberta that, or anything else you want to talk about, like hockey. Thank you very much, God bless, and have a great week.